All right, welcome to another live stream episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Hey, Renee, how you doing, my friend? I'm gonna have to send you an autographed copy of my book. You are the man. Can you hear me? According to this, I got everything working properly. So let me make sure. Got my chat running. Everybody's on top of things. So let me go grab the beginning topic. Sorry for the delay. That's what I get for now that I've got all this equipment. I just leave it all set up for live streaming for all the different things I do. So now the watch case is over there. So I had to go run and grab it. But essentially, we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Hey, Philip. We're going to talk about a bunch of things, but the first thing I wanted to talk about was me rebuying a Rolex Explorer 2. Any one of you who have been following the show know that I was really on the fence about it. I've got a love-hate relationship with Rolex, and I really didn't want to reward them for their shenanigans. Just opened a beer. Toast to everyone. It's an Augustiner Edelstoff. One of the nice things about being in Germany is you can buy Munich beer as a local uh, kiosk or bodega sale or whatever you want, whatever you call your local convenience stores. So, yeah, anybody who's listened to me for any length of time knows that I have a love hate relationship with Rolex. Cheers, Renee. That I have a love hate relationship with Rolex, and I am very critical of what's going on with them. But then again, in one sense, they're the dog that caught the car. What do you do when you become the most successful brand in your industry? Um, I mean, there are literally stores here all over my neighborhood, which is Frankfurt Wiesbaden area, which is a relatively affluent part of Germany, and they've got Rolexes in the shops, but they won't sell them to you. Uh, and frankly, the idea of going on a waiting list for a watch that you can see in the window is stupidity. Who's the idiot in that conversation? You're at a store, they have a product in the window, and you want to buy it, and they tell you you have to get on a waiting list of 6 months to a year to get it, but you can see it in the window. If you were an unscrupulous person, you could take a brick to the window and get yourself a Rolex. Of course, you'd have to spend time in jail, but then again, you'd have the Rolex, right? I mean, it's almost to the point where you could do a stupid like a bank heist where they steal the thing, they put their 7 years in jail, and they come out and they got the money. You could almost get to the point where it's worth stealing a Rolex, hiding it, and going into jail for the amount of time that you'd be for the crime. The prices are ludicrous. So I can see that the stores are almost in a rock and a hard place also because they've got these watches in the window and they don't trust that you're not going to flip them. So, I mean, I can understand where they're coming from, but that's a stupid and ludicrous position to be in. That you've got goods in the window, you can't sell them to anybody, you don't trust yourself to sell them to anybody, but you're showing them in the window anyway. So, like I said, who's the idiot in that conversation? Having said all of that, um, you almost have to differentiate Rolex as a brand from Rolex as a company because, hey, Xiaomi, good to see you here as well. But when you think about the situation they find themselves in, right? Um, Rolex as a company isn't going anywhere. It's a private trust, not private. I mean, it's a public trust set up by Hans Wilsdorf. He died childless, and he set Rolex up as a nonprofit trust to the Swiss government. So Rolex isn't going anywhere. It's got tons of money. It's got tremendous resources. They actually make very good watches. Uh, Case in point. And so I'm more frustrated with Rolex the brand than Rolex the company, because if you think about it, Tudor is Rolex the company, and Tudor is knocking it out of the park right now. They're making fantastic designs. The new Pelagos may not be making everyone fall in love with it, but it's damn sure got the press talking about it. It's got everybody talking about it, you know. So the new Pelagos is interesting, exciting, worth discussing, good looking, horologically significant. So, you know, you really find yourself, just as the retailers are finding themselves between a rock and a hard place, you're caught between the good part of Rolex and the weirdly evil part of Rolex. Or I shouldn't say evil, but the indifferent corporate side of Rolex. So in my case, I used to own, at one point, I had four Rolexes at one time. Oh, in my life, I've only owned five. Only, a lot of people haven't owned any. But I've owned a Milgauss, sold it. OP39, sold it. I sold the Milgauss because just a lot of hype for a watch that's not that. I mean, it's a great watch, but it's not a phenomenal watch. It's not $9,000 worth of watch. Um, and in this case, I've lucked. I won't call it luck, because a lot of people saw this watch. I would imagine half of the people who are into watches who watch this channel have probably seen this watch on Chrono 24. This was the Explorer 2 on Chrono 24 that didn't have a bracelet. So they were selling it for 6,700 euros, and nobody wanted it. It sat there for, I would say, half a year, because nobody wanted to buy an Explorer, a Rolex without the bracelet, because the bracelet's worth 1,500. But this is a 2005, all right, and unpolished. So it's got normal lugs, not drilled lugs. It's still got polish and brush top and side. So this is a 2005 Explorer 2. And I thought, if anybody knows me, I'm a NATO strap guy and a leather strap guy and other straps. So I'm like, to get this for a good price, even without the metal bracelet, is ironically a bargain when you're talking about Rolex. Um, and yet it is a bargain. If I ever decide to get rid of it and I get my hands on a bracelet, by the time I get my hands on a bracelet, the value of the watch will have gone beyond the cost of the bracelet to add to it to sell. If Rolex prices continue to go the direction they're going. But frankly, anyone who's been a collector will know what I mean when I say that I sold one. I used to have an Explorer 2. It was one of the five Rolexes that I owned. I also had a Bluesy, the two-tone blue, and I sold that because everybody thought I was a douchebag. I mean, it was the only, the Bluesy, the Rolex Bluesy was the only watch that when I posted Instagram pictures, I'd get comments about being a rich douchebag, and I'm not a rich douchebag. So I thought, I'm punching above my weight wearing the Bluesy. And I also then had a Oyster Quartz. And that was a really nice watch. I really liked that Oyster Quartz. The only problem with the Oyster Quartz is it's a 36. And I'm just looking, I put my ring somewhere, but that doesn't matter because I just realized I'm not wearing my rings. I was going to hold my wrist up for a wristwatch check. I'm wearing my JLC Polaris automatic. I'm really liking this watch now that I've gotten the right strap for it. This is a dyed alligator. I really, really like the way it works with this watch. But I bought the Explorer 2 because, ironically, it's the best bargain you can get for a Rolex with or without a bracelet. With a bracelet, a good one in decent condition is going to cost you about 7,200 to 7,500 euros. So like around what, 75 to $8,000. And the Explorer 2 is barely worth it. All right. Frankly, this is a $5,000 watch, not a $7,000 watch. It does have a complication. It's a GMT watch. So that's another thing that makes it more palatable, is that not only is it a Rolex, which is valuable, but it's a complicated Rolex, which a lot of people don't care about. But if you care about watches, you care about. And if you into deals, the Explorer 2 is the exact same watch as the GMT Master 2. The only difference is the bezel doesn't rotate. It's literally the same watch, same movement, same case. The only difference is the bezel on the GMT Master rotates and the bezel on the Explorer 2 doesn't. So you save yourself $10,000 right there for the same accuracy, same functionality. Yes, you do get a third time zone if you rotate the bezel on a GMT Master, but I strongly doubt anybody buys a GMT Master to track 3 time zones. Um, a lot do track two, and it's a great travel watch. It has the flying hour hand. I'm going to do another. I did a video on this. Please look it up. But I've got another video on this. I'm going to make another video on this as like a follow up and go over some of the things that I've noticed about owning an Explorer, like a long-term kind of thing. But essentially, if you sell a watch and then rebuy it, you've pretty much said, I want it in my collection. Actually, I kind of knew that. I had the previous one engraved to try to keep me from selling it, but the prices got to the point where I literally just had a jeweler polish off the engraving, and I sold my last one. But I'm glad I went through the journey, because it made me realize that I did want the Explorer 2, even though I do have a love-hate relationship with Rolex, and I was able to pick up a newer version and better condition of the watch, even though it doesn't have a bracelet. It's a newer watch, newer movement, newer case. So for me, it was worth the trade-off. And the lesson is always important when you sell a watch and you realize you screwed up and you buy another one. um, at least you know that that's a watch you really want, or else you wouldn't have gone through all that trouble to buy it the second time. Renee says, I think the shops would like to sell the pieces, but they aren't allowed to do that. Rolex wants them to keep the watches as display items. Hey, Neil. Renee, I think that it's a little of column A and a little of column B. I think they are keeping the watches as displays because if they sell them, they won't have displays. But I also think a part of it is that they don't know who to sell them to. They don't know who to trust. Someone walks in and buys it that they think's a good customer and takes that $5,500 €5,500 OP and flips it for 3,000, 4,000 euros more. It's got to be on the dealer's mind. So the ADs, like I said, I think they're a little bit between a rock and a hard place now. They're the dog that caught the car. They're the most valuable brand on the market, so they can't even sell their products at retail because the inflation is so great in the residuals that it's an inverse to the joke about cars, that it loses half the value when you drive off the lot. The Rolex gains half of its value when you walk out of the store. So they're in a catch 22 in some senses. Yes, they want to leave them on display, but the other side of the coin is they don't know who to sell them to. They can sell them to one of their best customers, and that person can flip it. So, I mean, I can appreciate the situation they're in, but I kind of laugh because they put themselves in it. If they had dealt with their supply chain issues, and if they had dealt with their um, chain of ownership issues, tracking. They got a barcode on each of those damn watches. There's no reason they can't track every single watch. The fact that they don't is either laziness, stupidity, or an incompetence. And I don't think they're stupid or incompetent. And I don't think they're lazy. So that means that there's some other motive that we don't know. And it can't just be pure profit, because I mean, Rolex, well, what they really need to do is develop an integrated bracelet version of one of their sports watches and jack the price up. But yeah, I think that they're a victim of their own success at this point. Everybody wants one, nobody likes them, And so as another reason I got the Explorer 2, it's the least flex Rolex. You don't flex an Explorer 2. You don't show up at the bar and go, "Well, I got an Explorer 2." Everybody knows it's one of the cheapest Rolexes out there. Every watch collectors know that it's Rolex for watch collectors, but You don't buy this if you want to go to the pool and show off next to the guy in the sub and go, "Well, I've got an Explorer too." No, that doesn't work. You might get it with an Explorer, oddly enough. The Explorer has more wrist presence in the Rolex sense. It has more of the modern Rolex DNA and bigger, shinier. Um, but the funny thing about Rolex is that, like I said, Rolex is a company. Tudor is making some fantastic watches. Tudor is knocking them out of the park. They're really, really making people think, and they're really well. I have a whole video on that too. I believe the new Tudor is the old Rolex. But enough of that. Let's talk about some other matters in the watch world. Does anybody have any comments or ideas? If not, we'll talk about some stuff. So, Neil, what do you think of Richard Mill? Um, well, okay. Richard Mille has two advantages. All right, they have two advantages. One is they're actually good watches, right? I mean, if you buy a Richard Mille, it's not just plastic stuffed with gears. They really are good watches. They're well engineered. The watch they made for that golf player can really handle that level of shock. Their skeleton designs are they do make really nice, well engineered watches. They're garish as hell. I don't know if I would wear one. I mean, I don't play in that field to afford one, but I don't know if I'd wear one. But then again, Richard Meal's market is not us, right? They're not playing for us, right? The $5,000 to $10,000 watch marketplace ain't Richard Mills. Um, Richard Mill is for the person who's going to that party and they know Sylvester Stallone's going to be wearing that douchebag big, but then that's also Richard Mill, haha. Or they'll think that okay, that he'll be showing up in his humongous gaudy Panerai, or XYZ person at the party is going to have XYZ watch. So Richard Mill, their value proposition is one, they truly are interesting, functional, different watches, and they're pitched for the person who has to go to that party and sit by the guy who's got the the sky dweller and can't stop talking about it. So you can go, well, you have a sky dweller, but I got a Richard Mill, and everybody knows that it's I wouldn't say, you can't call Richard Mill overpriced and call Rolexes reasonably priced, right? So if Rolexes are reasonably priced, Richard Mills are reasonably priced, because if you could justify $20,000 for a three-hander diver with a date, you can definitely justify $50,000 for some of the complications: perpetual calendars, flyback chronographs, tourbillons. So Rolex can't even touch half the movements that Rolex doesn't have a tourbillon. Rolex doesn't have a perpetual calendar. Rolex doesn't have a flyback chronograph. So you wear the Richard Mill to the party that you know your friend's going to have his Rolex, and you know that he can't say shit to you about his Richard Mill. I mean, about your Richard Mill. That's what Richard Mill's value proposition is. You could be the rich guy in the room with the other rich guy's watch that's not just a pretentious poser. The Richard Mill actually has something interesting inside of it for techie and gadgety and sporty people. So yeah, no, Richard Mill, I totally yeah, give it to you, Neil. I mean, they are um they're good watches. So it's like, let's say I wanted to buy back in the day, like a Bricklin sports car. Why am I buying a Bricklin sports car? Because everyone else has got a Corvette. So I bought the Bricklin because everyone else has a Corvette. Here in Germany, they buy Mustangs so that, they can be different from the guys with the Porsches. And they know that American cars are comically expensive here to maintain because they're foreign cars as well. So, frankly, anybody buying a Mustang here either loves displacement or they want to be different from their buddy who's got the Porsche or the BMW 6 or the Mercedes A with the AMG tuning. So the Richard Mills, yeah, the Richard Mills for people who have to go to parties and stand next to people wearing Audemars Piguets. That's what Richard Mills for, in my humble opinion. Xiaomi, can a design like Richard Mille survive the times? Well, I do believe it can for that exact reason, right? We're in a world where you don't need a watch, right? You don't need this. You got the time is on your phone. I don't even know where I put all my phones in my pocket. You got your time right here, right? Um, so if a phone, I mean, if a watch is a style statement, right? If a watch is more than just a way to tell time, then actually the more eccentric the style statement is, in some cases, the better it is, right? Anybody who wants to be loud, wear the leather jacket with the Louis Vuitton logos stamped all over it. Richard Mille fits right in there. Frankly, Rolexes are almost too staid, which is why they bling them up. You don't see too many blingy Richard Milles because they're already, blazing in your eye with the colors and the patterns and the like. Or, you know what I mean? It really is a case of it is a status flash in a lot of ways, and I'm not a big fan of using watches as a status flash. But then again, watches are one of the few pieces of jewelry a person can wear without being considered flashy. You know what I mean? You could be a man in a suit or a woman in a suit and have no jewelry on. You're all business and be rolling with a Rolex president, you know, or a Richard Mille or a Jacob and Co. Some crazy thing with an astronaut spinning around a globe that cost $1 million. Um, there are different reasons to wear a watch, and frankly, one of them is uh, a flash, a status flex, and those are all there. So if I'm in a room full of people and they've all got smartwatches and I'm wearing a Richard Mille on my wrist and everybody in the room can see it, and I got my phone out because I'm not the kind of person who's looking at my watch all the time. I got everything on my phone that the watches have, but the watch on my wrist, nobody's got. So there's that. So like I said, I'm not a big person for watch flex, but then again, I'm balling in the $5,000 to $10,000 watch space. Which I mean, you could flex at TGI Fridays, but why? You're there to have fun, or if you know what I mean. If you The average person's not looking to flex. And some are not looking to. They're looking to flex a little. They're looking to say, keeping up with the Joneses. They want their friends to admire their choice. Okay, there's a difference between thinking, I hope my friends like my watch, and thinking, yes, bow before Zod. There are different mentalities there, and so Richard Mille plays in that upper space in the park where um, you hire designers to make you an outfit for one event. You know, that's how it is. I mean, we've always been rubbing different colored mud in our navels to impress the opposite sex, depending on the culture, right? And I think right now we're trying to decide what the new luxury goods are, and luckily, watches are one of the things that everybody agrees on is a luxury good that will transition into the new shiny world of Internet of Things and cloud enabled you know computing. um let's see, I've been looking for a Vacheron Constant. Oh yeah, Vacheron Constantin is awesome. I mean, and a lot of people say that they're not as good as Audemars Piguet. I think it's the other way around. I think Vacheron is a better brand than Audemars. Audemar's kind of a one-trick pony, and unfortunately, they tried to get out of the corral, as it were. AP made that whole new series. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. Everybody crapped all over it, but they're beautiful watches, and they're not Royal Oaks. But everyone told AP, "We don't like you doing the same watch all the time. Stop trying to do different watches." Like AP is another one of those companies that they were the dog that caught the car. They When they went to Genta and he he changed the dynamic of the sports watch world by creating the first Royal Oak. He also kind of Mr. Spocked Audemars Piguet. AP can only do the Royal Oak now. Leonard Nimoy can only be Spock. Um, and Vacheron doesn't have those fetters, but then again, they don't have a unique enough design language. Yes, the overseas has got that very interesting bezel, but you can't tell that from across the room. Rolex, you can tell a Rolex from across the room. You can tell an AP from across the room. You uh, you can tell. I like the new Polaris series by JLC. It harks back to the old memo boxes and all. It has a design language as well. Um, the Rolex Explorer 2 has a design language. But like I said, you wear this on a NATO, people know you're not there to show off how much it cost. They probably realize that you have it because you like it and you need at least one Rolex in your collection. I shouldn't say you know, but it's nice to have at least one Rolex in the collection. And like I said, I am glad I sold the other one. This is a better one, but it just shows you all of the thoughts that go through your head when you're trying to build your collection because watch collecting is a journey. Okay, we got somebody spamming, so I'm going to have to remove, and I think I'll report this one. Pornography report, and we'll just delete this one too. So we got rid of the naked HD sexy girl ones. Or let's try this one more left. Remove. Okay. VC is part of the Holy Trinity. You're absolutely right, Renee. VC is considered part of the Holy Trinity, but a lot of people consider them the bottom rung of the Holy Trinity, which I figure once you're at that level, you could be all considered equal. And the funny thing about the Trinity is that it's a Swiss Trinity. Nobody brings up A Lange and Söhne. And I would say that their watches are as good, if not better, than any of the ones from the Trinity. So that's the other thing to worry about when you start looking at labels and what people consider is important and what people consider is the right watch to wear. They may not even know what watches are out there. I just noticed I'm not that centered. There we go. Center, screw the camera angle. You know what I mean? Like one of the things I've always said about watch collecting and the journey of watch collecting is you have to know the watches that are available in order to desire them, right? My Globemaster, I didn't even know it existed before I bought it, and it's the favorite piece in my collection. Or think of some things like my Sorna vintage, or well, a lot of vintages are watches you don't know about until you stumble across them because some of those companies came and went without a trace. But I guess what I'm trying to stress here is market valuation is important, but it's not a be all and end all. Some brands are overvalued, some brands are undervalued. I think JLC is the most undervalued brand in the market. It should be in the triumvirate. It's made movements for all of them. They hand finish their cases. They take 1,000 hours on their movements to dial them in. So why not JLC? JLC, I would say, currently has a more interesting palette of offerings than Audemars Piguet does. I would say JLC is definitely got better watches than Rolex, and yet Rolex beats the living hell out of them in retail. This this JLC would be comparable to say an Explorer. I mean, an Explorer or an OP, right? And those are watches that retail, I shouldn't say retail, but sell used and on the gray market for 8 to 10. And this watch is worth 4 to 5. There's something wrong with market valuations when a watch with this caliber of fit and finish and quality sells for half of what a watch that just has a good market position sells for. So seems girls like the Richard Mill. Give him Sigurd design. Actually, David, that's an excellent point. Siga Design or Siga, I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Siga Design, they've got some really nice pieces. Pardon me if anybody was watching my Instagram feed. I ate literally and ran back here in time, so I apologize. But Siga Design does what I like to call the 80-20 rule homage. They take 80% of what the watch represents and they represent it honestly. And then that 20% of, oh my God, look at that finishing, they leave to the company that they're copying. So that Siga Design, I would say it's about 80% of a Richard Mill. And the thing about diminishing returns, as I've said many, many times, the difference between bad and good is palpable. The difference between good and great is with training palpable, but the difference between great and luxury is no one notices. And the Sitka design falls between the good and the great. The Richard Mill falls between the great and the luxury, but the average person is happy with pretty good, damn good. And so the Sitka designs, I think, are great alternatives to those. And as you point out, the average person is not going to notice and really not going to notice. But the thing about luxury is like high definition. The closer you look, the more you see. So in the case of that Richard Mill, the closer you look, the more you'll see. The case of the Siga, the closer you look, there comes a point where you don't see anything more. It's just a watch. So that's that 20% that Richard Mill is giving you. Let's see. I do like the Explorer 2. Yeah, Neil, I have a whole video on the Explorer 2 as before I even sold the one I had before, but I did a whole video on the Explorer 2 as the last real tool watch that Rolex made. And I do believe that. That's another reason I rebought it. It really is a good watch. It's a functional watch. It's everything Tudors are today. Speaking of tools, I almost forgot to mention it. My girlfriend gave me a advent calendar, but the advent calendar is full of tools. So you open up the door and it gives you a tool, and at the end of it all, it you get a tool kit. As you see, I've got a couple of the pieces. It gives you all of the little parts for the. I got to go hunt for that stupid piece now. But yeah, so when I finish doing the advent calendar, I'll have a little toolkit. What a cute idea. But tools, we all like good tools. And the Explorer 2 is a good tool watch. I don't think any of the new range of Rolexes are tool watches. They call themselves tool watches, but that's like buying a tool set from Louis Vuitton. They're all covered in leather and they're gold plated. You're not going to use them for anything unless you are really, really rich. Um, Rolexes are Rolex, the brand. Rolex is trying hard to become one of the Trinity. Rolex, the company, like I said, make great watches. Tudor's knocking it out of the park. But I think Rolex, the brand, is making mistakes. I really do. But then that's just me, and I'm just a journalist sitting on my butt in a 3-room apartment in Germany. So it's not like I'm sitting on my yacht giving commands out to my industrial minions. So, Brigay, hey Alexander. Well, what's a comeback? What's a comeback in mechanical watches? Brigay's respected and people buy them. I don't think they're going to gain much more market share. If you think maybe Brigay will get better market share, then Brigay is going to need to come out with something new, fun, and interesting that takes people's eye. I mean, for example, Mont Blanc was able to come out of nowhere and blow people away with their pieces. Um, I owned a Geosphere myself, which was a fantastic piece. So pretty, I never wore it. And it's more of a pretty watch, but awesomely functional. And I sold it because it wasn't getting enough wrist time. But um, there's a Brigade that's been sitting in the window of the shop in my neighborhood for over a year. I'm not going to buy it. I mean, it's a nice flat. It's their Flieger, but it's a black faced Flieger chronograph. I got an IWC. I got a Speedmaster. That's the thing. Breguet's got to do something different and interesting to get the people. I mean, yeah, if you want a Flieger, you're gonna buy an IWC, or you're gonna buy a Speedmaster, or if at the lower end, buy a Stova. Stovas are fantastic watches. Um, if you want to get a diver, you're gonna get a Seamaster, or you're gonna get an Oris or a Tissot, right? Breguet's gotta show something for their price tag. I mean, if you're gonna drop 20K on a watch, 10K on a watch, it's gonna make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And Breguet's just not doing it right now. I'm sorry. Um, Lange and Söhne, a large Neil, the spell check got Neil with large and Söhne is so well made. It is so well made. If you look at, okay, if you look at, say, for example, a Patek, you look at the Patek and you look at the movement, they've got a jillion rubies in it, right? So it's a very heavily jeweled movement. And there might be some chatons, and there might be a couple of blued screws. But if you open up, I mean, well, you don't even have to open up. You look in the back of a Lange, not only is it gorgeously finished, but they use gold chatons. And the reason, and gold chatons are originally designed for a time when the rubies weren't synthetic and they had different irregular shapes. And so you put them in gold collars so that they would have a consistent size and shape. You don't need gold collars nowadays, but they still use gold collars. And they secure those gold collars with blued screws. You don't need gold collars on your jewels anymore, and you don't need blue screws to secure the gold collars. That's like wearing belt and suspenders and tying pieces of rope around your upper thighs to keep your pants from falling off. So Lange and Sona makes the triumvirate look like second place players. If you hold the best of Patek up against the best of Lange, the Patek's going to come away a little sad. I mean, at best, it'll be a push. And then considering that that Patek probably cost 20 to $30,000 more than that Lange, a push is not a push. A push is a win for the watch that costs enough to buy a car with the saved money. So Breguet's turnover makes them number 17. Yeah, see, Renee, that's a good. Like I said, it's not that Breguet's not selling; it's just that they're not in everybody's eye. People buy Breguet; they're in the market. It's just that they're not blowing people's skirts up. You know. Uh, cool present, yeah, Renee. It is a cool present. She's a cool person. We almost broke up, but more about lifestyles because she's very independent, and I'm like, but that's a long story, and I don't need to burden you all with it. But we're doing okay, and that's just a great gift to get from somebody. A little advent calendar. If it was all chocolate, I would of course eat all the chocolate, but the tools are something nice you can always use downstream. Um, I have two of the calendars with the chocolate. Yeah, yeah. Well, see, the Europeans just crush it when it comes to chocolate. But I keep chocolate in my R2D2 cookie jar. I don't keep cookies in there. I keep Milka brownies and stuff like that. Because Milka makes brownies, little brownies, and they wrap them individually. I don't know if they're available in the States, but you can buy them here. Ah, love the ideal of a Louis Vuitton toolkit. Well, I wish I could find one. No, I wish I wouldn't, because it would probably cost the world, and then you wouldn't want to hit a nail for scratching the gold plating on the hammerhead. Um, but if no one has a topic, let's take a quick look. See, we've got about 20 minutes left before the episode's out. Um, and just poking through the subscriptions, interesting enough, Watchfinder is just talking about the Richard Mille, the big funky Richard Mille dive watch, and why is it so expensive? I'll let you. I really like Watchfinder. They have some of the best videos in the industry. Uh, we could probably guess why it's so expensive. We went over some of the reasons earlier in the show, but I'll let you enjoy it from his lips, because it really is a good video. Um, Just One More Watch is talking about the Seiko SRPG. It's the Seiko 5 field watch, and he says it's the best field watch under 200. And I'd agree with him because Seiko makes good watches. I just am disgusted with Seiko for different reasons that I'm disgusted with Rolex. At least Rolex's indices line up. Seiko, I've had several, and the only one I was even remotely pleased with function wise was the spring drive. But their mainstream watches, the fit and finish for the money you're paying is a joke. I had a Seiko UFO, and the minute totalizer never lined up even after I had it serviced. So, if you can't fix it right, there's something seriously wrong with your watches. But I guess that's a lemon problem. But then again, if your lemon problem is so large that people use the lemon problem to make fun of your company, you need to look at that. But I don't buy Seikos anymore, so that's not my problem anymore. Watchfinder talks about spotting a fake Rolex. Frankly, the only way to really know with a Rolex, okay, obviously, if the obvious tells are there, if the lettering isn't clean, and if the rehout's not tight, and if the engraving's off, that's easy. But if it's a super clone, the only way you're gonna tell, and Federico Talks Watches also concurred with me. Well, I should say I concurred with him, or we all concur because it's not our secret. You have to look at the balance. Rolexes use a free sprung balance, so there's only going to be one control arm. If it's a super clone, it'll have two control arms because nobody's making a super clone, as far as I know, with a free sprung balance. Now, if it's a super clone with a free sprung balance, then they're almost a Rolex. But you look at the balance, and if there are two control arms on the balance wheel, one is going to be for the spring and one is going to be for the tilt of the balance wheel, which is how you balance a non-free sprung balance wheel. But if you see two control arms, it's not a real Rolex. If you see one control arm, at least you know it's a better super clone than you can spot, or I can spot, or anybody can spot. Because if you got a super clone with a free sprung balance, you're gonna have to send it to Rolex to be verified, frankly. Um, Neil, I'm so loving the hobby. It's a great hobby. Watches are a fantastic hobby. There's no religion, there's no sex, there's no politics. Okay, maybe Rolex and Omega, but you know what I mean? You could walk up to somebody who doesn't even speak your language and they'll go, "Hey, nice one, nice watch, Uh, well, as a tech journalist, I'm fond of saying technology is pure. I mean, obviously, everything has coloration in our society, but technology is about as pure as you're going to get of a topic before drifting into aggressive ideologies and taste. Uh, Beer is another one, although there's a lot of ideology in beer as well. I think a lot of American microbrews are a little too hoppy for my taste. So we got 15 minutes left. Anybody have anything they wanted to talk about or get? Well, speaking of topics, I just noticed that Renee said it's a really great hobby, but expensive. Buy Vostok. You don't have to buy Seiko to buy cheap. Weirdly enough, Orient, which is a Seiko company, seems to have better fit and finish than Seiko. But then again, Orient isn't run by Seiko; they're just owned by Seiko. So Orient makes good, inexpensive watches. Vostok makes good, inexpensive watches. Seagull, the Chinese, don't ignore the Chinese, makes good, inexpensive watches. Then you can look at some of the quartz-based micro brands. They make good, inexpensive watches. So yes, you could drop a lot of money on a watch, but then again, you could get a Casio. This is my zombie apocalypse watch. I used to have a mechanical watch for my zombie apocalypse watch, and then I realized a solar-powered, radio-controlled G-Shock. Uh, they're going to find it wrapped around the skeletal arm of my desiccated corpse, in the future if it goes that direction. Otherwise, they'll find me in the tattered remains of the suit with the frizzled remains of the Jejely coat around my wrist, or the Globemaster. But yeah, if it's a zombie apocalypse, and this is what's going out the door with me. The other watches will be in a backpack because I'll use them as trade goods, which is a point I made before. Um, if things really go weird, this will get you a lot farther than a chunk of gold will. You can use it, and that border guard will take it to let you through, maybe. So, ever heard of Wyler Watches? Big Sal. Ever heard of Wyler Watches? They shut down production years ago, but their Code R models seem to have influenced Richard Mill. I'm going to have to look up Wyler Watches. Wyler, the only Wyler I could think about, there used to be a lemonade company called Wyler's. Wyler Watches. Wyler Watches. Wyler Watches. And what does it say about Wyler watches? Wyler gained worldwide notoriety. They were in 1927. They used the Incaflex balance wheel. The Incaflex balance wheel was protected along its diameter by two curved elastic arms. So I guess it was like a predecessor to the Inca block mechanism. So Wyler got their name from their shock mechanism, which makes a lot of sense because uh, watches and shock are a serious issue. And if you do anything more than just walk briskly with an unprotected watch, you could have serious issues. And it says here that it was in 1934 the official watch of Italy's World Cup team. And in 1937, they came out with a water resistant watch, and it was a compressor design. See, so, you know, Weiler actually sounds to be a very cool brand. I'm going to have to look into them. I might pick up one of their antique pieces for my collection. You never know. But well spotted. Thanks for bringing that up, Big Sal. So, um, going into the end of this, I figured if no one else brings anything up, there's something that I was curious about doing an episode on, and now's a good time to do it as a close to ask you all to vote. And I wanted to talk about some because I'm a technology journalist in my day job, and a lot of watch people are interested in technology. Would you like to have me do an episode, like maybe my next live stream, and talk about what's going on right now in the cloud, Internet of Things, wide bandgap semiconductors, cloud computing, AI at the edge? I give you all a little update on what's going on in the tech space because everybody's talking about silicon in watches as a material. Silicon parts in Omegas and silicon parts in Zeniths. The funny thing is silicon as a semiconductor is pretty much obsolete, which is another reason you're finding it in a lot of other applications. But yeah, if you're designing with silicon electronics and you're not making anything, if you're making anything more sophisticated than a washing machine, and you're not using gallium arsenide or gallium nitride or silicon carbide in your power electronics, you're going to get your lunch eaten by the other companies in the space. But that's just something I'm throwing out there. We can always obviously talk about watches, or we could talk about tech and then talk about watches. But that's a topic that I'm curious if you're interested in. The Code R caseback had shock absorbers. This Big Sal is saying the Code R caseback had shock absorbers in the case and became famous when dropped from the Eiffel Tower and kept ticking. Well, see, there you go, Big Sal. See, so Weiler got their claim to fame through their shock absorbing mechanisms and elegant shock absorbing technologies. It's kind of sad that they're not around. If you think about it, right? I mean, they obviously added some interesting horological aspects to the discussion, and that they're not around is kind of sad. Thank you for bringing them up, Big Sal. Thanks a lot. Props to you. And send me your email. I'll send you a PDF of my novel. Oh, come on. I reported you already, naked HXYZ. Remove. All right. Online strips without clothing. Well, how could you strip with clothing on. If you're stripping, you're taking the clothing off. So they're not even good spammers. Their language is atrocious. So, did I hear that AWS announced they will offer Apple M1 EC2 instances? No, I don't play in the consumer space. I work for electronic design publications. So when I talk about the cloud, I'm talking about using Altium software for the design and using Silicon Labs microcontrollers and Melexis sensor suites and the like. So um, I work at the component, the board level. So what the vendors are selling, I think is great, but I don't track exactly what the end products people are getting are. I'm interested in how those products are being made. What are the semiconductor technologies, wireless methodologies, software protocols, magnetics and passives even. There's a lot going on at the board level right now in electronics, and it's going to influence everything we're doing. I mean, just the whole renaissance in power electronics with wide bandgap semiconductors, gallium nitride, and silicon carbide are changing the world as we speak. When everybody talks about Tesla and the chip revolution that Tesla is doing, you think logic when you hear chip, but in reality, what everyone's referring to is Tesla has migrated to these new silicon carbide power semiconductors, and that's why they're able to offer three times the range and a third of the size of the drivetrain and the like, because silicon carbide has three times the electron mobility of silicon, and it's the second hardest material on the planet. The only reason it hasn't taken over is it sublimates. There's no liquid state, so you have to grow it from a gas to a single crystal ingot, which they call a boule because it looks like a little loaf of bread because they have to grow it in an oven that's as hot as the inside of a star. Uh, let's see. Please, Big Sal. So we're about 5 minutes from close. If no one's got anything that they wanted to talk about, let's close out the episode until next week. If you have anything you want to talk about, ping me and we'll bring it up. Although next week, I think what I'll probably do is this whole thing with Rob and his homage watches. I want to have an episode where we talk about homage watches and what people think about homage watches. And yeah, explore that for a while because we need to talk about every facet of watch collecting. And homage watches are kind of like the redheaded stepchild, the black sheep. They're there, but nobody really talks about them. David, cheers. So have a great night. Glad to be here, and I really appreciate you all supporting me. Tell your friends, and please subscribe.